Though he tried to keep all his emotions in check, Licksnatch was almost shaking as he and Rosalie got out of the transport, paid their bill, and walked towards the house. Rosalie noticed that Licksnatch was oddly quiet as he looked at the door, completely unblinking. Rosalie herself was just happy to be returning from such a long work trip, several years in fact, and she reveled in the bright sunny day as she was finally on a planet after so long. She could hear the sounds of a group behind the house laughing and yelling, having fun, along with the intelligible sounds of kids playing in a pool, screaming and joking. Rosalie then finally noticed Licksnatch and how nervous he actually was, to the point she looked and she saw that his tail, the long, rat-like tail of his species, was wrapped all the way around his leg, the green of his tail contrasting against the white pants that Rosalie purchased for him for this particular trip. Rosalie looked at him and said, "You can relax. They won't bite, I think." Licksnatch turns and says, "I know they won't bite. It's not the biting I'm worried about." Rosalie looked a little smug, but also a little taken back as she said, "Are you still thinking about that? Come on, Lick, it was only one time. Besides, we wouldn't be together if it hadn't happened." Lick, slowing down his pace, said, "You say that, but you didn't have to watch 3 of your own species get their clothing folded while they were still in said clothing by a single human." Rosalie said, "I did rush in afterwards, you know that. Besides, no one held it against you that those 4 decided to try some armed robbery while there was a human inside." Licksnatch says, "I am aware, yet seeing one human male not even flinch as a pulse pistol strike just made him stronger, angrier. I mean, the idea of your species making such a dangerous chemical inside their body naturally is still slightly unsettling." Rosalie grinned before responding, "You sure didn't seem to mind the adrenaline spike last night." Pausing for a second, Lick turned and said, That's different." Rosalie says, "So you're not still sore?" Lick continues to walk, said, "Most of the bruising has gone away, at least. Just also, don't mention that to your family," as he says, turning right towards her eyes. "Kuragast did that, and he said they almost killed him for saying something like that." Rosalie slowed down, but continued to approach the door, and she retorted, "Kuragast has absolutely zero tact. I mean, I swear, I have no idea why you two are even still friends. He's a taint after all. Those reptilians tend to cause everybody trouble no matter where they go, no matter what they do." Lick just turns and says, "He's been my friend since we were in our formative years." Rosalie's knocking on the door and says, "Still, as long as you don't mention such things or anything on that subject, I'm sure you'll be fine." Lick just stops at the front door, looks at her and says, "Still, I'm a little apprehensive about meeting your familiars." Rosalie turns for a second and says, "It's family again, and there's nothing to be afraid of." It was at that moment they heard the doorknob open, and the door opens, and Rosalita and Lick look up at an older man standing in front of them. Rosalie stands at 5'4", and Lick at 5'7", though the man looking down at them stands at 6'1". The rough man, wide and strong, looks down on them as Rosalie yells, "Dad!" and jumps up and gives him a big old hug, still dangling down off his neck. They hug for a moment before they finally release. The father says, "Good to see you made it. So is this him?" Rosalie says, "Yes, Dad, this is Lick." The dad simply sticks his hand out and says, "Good to finally meet you." As they shake hands, Lick realizes that the size of the man's hands dwarfs his, and the pressure made him almost flinch. He knew all about a firm, hard handshake, but still, He could feel the pain radiate up his arm. When Rosalita's father finally let go of his hand, he turned to Rosalita and said, "Oh, I almost forgot. Your brother. He could actually make it." Rosalie's eyes got real big and said, "Steve is here?" Behind her father, she hears the word, "Yep." She then runs over and jumps into the arms of her little brother, a 20-year-old human who looks like he snorts creatine before breakfast every morning, just broad and defined, holding up Rosalie and having to hold her up because he stands at 6'3". And Lick looks as Rosalie's feet just dangle off the ground as her brother reaches his arms around her, lifts her up, and gives her a nice strong hug. After the introductions of Steve and Lick, and of course a much stronger handshake that leaves Lick's hand in excruciating pain, even though he tries to hide it before his hand starts shaking from the pressure, they begin to head out back, right through the domicile to the rest of the family. At that moment, if Lick wasn't nervous before, he definitely is now. Lick looks around to see all the humans in every direction. Most of the children, of course, are playing in the pool, splashing each other and screaming, some of them floating on something that seems inflatable, or simply trying to dive down and grab strange rods that seem to be colorful from the bottom, seem to be playing some sort of game as they call out someone named Polo. As he looks around, he can see the adults are all abouts in very little clothing, as though they're preparing to jump into the pool and swim as well. Lick knows that humans can keep themselves at peak physical condition through their current science, but he has never seen so much raw, pulsating musculature coming from all of them. Muscles wrapped around an endoskeleton that is easily 6 times denser than his own, and he knew it. As he stood there observing the sight of what he believed could be instant death that seemed to be walking around, drinking and talking, Rosalie walks up to him and just motions, saying, "See? Nothing to be afraid of." Lick himself doesn't say anything for a moment as he notices a cooler that just got closed, but he did notice that it was full of ice and drinks. And he watched as it's easily lifted from the ground by an adolescent male, without straining, without breathing heavy, nothing, and placing it off to the side as it seems to have been in the way of others. He thinks to himself how this simple act would be a strain for 3 of his own species. He then noticed several of the larger males turning and looking, some of them wanting to walk up. He didn't know if they were going to go and give Rosalie a hug as well, or they were coming over to snap him in half as though he was absolutely nothing. He quickly thought to himself that if he's going to make a good impression, he's going to have to make sure that he doesn't do anything embarrassing. So he simply turns to Rosalie and as calmly as possible says, question, where's your latrine?" Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today on a short story. Before I go, I need to send out some special thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be Prozac and Pancakes, Brian Kemp, SS Demon, Guardian Sage, MTF Guard, and Erica Gem. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.